Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite down here. As I am from Ohio, I was hoping to come to the South for some warmer weather, but apparently that's just not going to be possible these next couple of days. So, with that being said, I would like to start this presentation off by having each one of you think about your operation and when the word manure is mentioned. Do you grumble, cringe, immediately get a headache, or do you smile? Because you're like, no, that's a cheaper organic fertilizer that's better for the soil so I can grow better corn for a better feed source for my cows. I would also like you to think about your entire manure handling process. Do you have just a lagoon? Do you have multi-stage lagoons and you're utilizing irrigation? Are you inquiring about maybe implementing a digester? Do you deal with some solids? My goal with this presentation is to provide you with an insight on how my family runs our manure application business, and through that, spark at least one idea, no matter how small, for you to implement back in your operation. I would also like to mention that we only handle liquid. We did dry for a little while there. Told Dad the day we spread dry again is the day I quit. So this is our logo. Using manure is one of the original forms of recycling. So not necessarily just because of the green movement, but really to explain all the benefits of manure, we had this design as our logo. So one section is corn or feed or whatever else, cover alfalfa. The next one is cows for meat, milk production. We also handle a lot of hog manure as well. And then of course the manure. One cannot exist without the other, and all are equally important. Keeping each section balanced is the key to success. So we should all know that manure contains the macronutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and it also has organic matter. Anytime you add organic matter to the soil is a positive for soil health. And after taking a manure test, it's relatively easy to put an actual economic number to that. But we also need to think of, and I think this might be in the back of our minds and not necessarily the forefront, but it is still a crucial component of the micronutrient value, the biological activity. And again, anytime you add organic matter to the soil, it's going to be a benefit. I've been in this industry for several years. It's my father's company. As soon as I could talk, I said I was going to go haul lime like Dad. My mother was thankful it was not another four-letter word. So by going to meetings throughout the last 30 or so years, talking to people and trying to figure out how do we quantify this? And so far, there's been several articles written, but no one has a really good idea. So I'm going to use an example here. If manure application cost is a penny to apply it beside the barn, but to move it down the road is going to cost 1.2 cents. And again, our operation, we charge by the gallon and not by the hour. We just feel that's more fair to all parties involved. So anytime I'm talking numbers, I'm going to talk nutrients per 1,000 gallons or pennies per gallon or something like that. So to move it down the road, it's going to cost 1.2 cents. Right beside the barn seems easier, cheaper, and faster, right? And of course, we want to get this process done. Never know how well Mother Nature is going to cooperate. Faster is better, right? Well, let's go through some more details here and figure that out. The soil is like a sponge. It can only hold so many nutrients before the nutrients start to leave. When those nutrients leave, they end up in places they're not supposed to be, i.e. a waterway, and they can not only cause environmental concerns, but it is literally throwing money down the drain. So this is a I've pulled these numbers from a manure test. It has a value of dairy manure, 97% moisture. It has a value of 15, 6, 17. I'm also going to give credit to the ammonia in because I'm making the assumption that it's injected. Injection is a very common practice in Ohio. I'm not sure how you deal with it down here in Georgia, but for these purposes, it's going to be injected. I've also taken these numbers from Central Ohio commercial fertilizer prices in April of 23. So nitrogen with a price of 55 cents a pound, the ammonia is 7 pounds. That's a total of $3.85 per 1,000 gallons. Organic, we have almost 8 pounds of it at 55 cents. That's a total cost of $4.29. P2O5, 6 pounds at 76 cents a pound. That's a total of $4.56. Potassium, 17 pounds at 45 cents a pound is $7.65. That brings a total value of this manure of $20.35 per 1,000 gallons. That back figures to 2 cents a gallon. You can move manure a pretty good distance for 2 cents a gallon. And of course, this is before adding in the organic matter, biological activity, and micronutrient values. In a situation of when our business is working with a dairy and we want to bring more crop farmers on board, because the reality is we need more crop guys taking this manure. There's a lot of it in the United States. We've got to move it and we've got to show its value. So we asked them, I'm going to give you $20 and I would like you to give me 5 back. How many times do you want to do that today? And usually that's when you can see the light bulb go off and be like, maybe this is something I need to put in my program. And I mean, look at the National Corn Growers Yield Contest. Over 50% of those winners are using some type of organic in their program. So just the basic minimal facts right there, manure is some really good stuff. And also, depending on the situation and how things are brokered, I have some customers that only charge the crop farmer so much per acre. Some of them do put a value to it. But as a good rule of thumb, during that process, we like to say sell manure for half price P and K. And this specific example is worth 1.2 cents. If it happens to be a situation where application cost is 1.3 or 1.4, the crop farmer should pay the 1.2, and hopefully the dairy would pick up the difference. And that should still be a win, because don't look at that as a manure cost. Look at it as a reduction in your commercial fertilizer bill. So after looking at all of that, it makes sense to move it down the road. That way you're literally not throwing money away. It is not only economical, but an environmentally correct answer. And we have got to move this manure away from the barns. It's needed elsewhere. The economics usually are there to move it. And that's a benefit for everyone. So my family's business works with all different kinds of sizes of operations, and we handle all different types of liquids, but we say if it's liquid and it can be land applied, we're the people to talk to. So with the CAFO rules, all of the information that I am required to have and to provide to my customer, I have implemented that to all of my producers. So it doesn't matter what size you are, I provide you with all of the data so they can make better decisions. And this turns out to having 8 different sheets of paper. In the right side here is what I like to call the cover sheet. It has the name of the operation, dates of application, the name of the field, how many acres we applied to on that field, the total gallons we got moved that day, and how that back figures to how many gallons per acre. I also have an overview of the manure sample. Ohio's rules are you have to have 1 composite sample per manure storage area per year. We pull daily composite samples. because even with agitation, the reality is the first day of application is probably not going to have as many nutrients as the last day. So just to give the farmer a better idea, and on our GPS maps, I draw space and be like, yep, we did this part of the field this day. This was the nutrient value. So maybe one side of the field got some more nutrients than the other one. And then we, of course, weather. We have to print out, it says in the regulations, we have to use NOAA. So I print off the weather every day for every site, because the reality is Mother Nature dictates things. And when she's calling for a tenth of an inch, we can apply. But then we get an inch, we have a spill. I can be like, hey, forecast said I was good. And talking to Bryce here a little bit earlier, we have a better relationship with our Department of Ag on the CAFO side of things. It seems like they are really willing to work with producers. So yes, we do have alphabet soup show up, but ODA is our first line of defense. And as long as we've got our records and all of our data, they will defend us. The sheet also make notes of, was the manure incorporated? Definition of incorporation Ohio is within 24 hours. So I'll make a note of immediate, or if the farmer came by a few hours later and did it for us, that still counts, but I do make a note that it wasn't immediate. I also have ground conditions. Are we applying to silage ground so we can incorporate? Were we applying to alfalfa and we couldn't? Was the soil super dry, or was it maybe a little tacky? Again, providing all of this data, and we have it at our fingertips, because I don't know if you guys are anything like me, but I can barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what we did a month ago, and now there's an issue. We also do tile checks, if applicable, and we do the time, were they not running, were they? Again, all kinds of notes and all kinds of data, so there's no questions. After that, so that's just the first sheet. And again, that's an overview of everything. So next sheet is a copy of the actual manure test. So the producer and the crop farmer can look and see exactly what we did. And then after that, the last several years, it's like, okay, we know manure is good, and usually our customers understand that. But I have started to do a manure economics sheet. So when they look, they're like, yep, they can look at their bill of what I charged them. They can look at the value. And most of the time, our cost of application is less than what that manure is worth. And that's a key detail when we are working with these larger operations and we need more crop farmers on board. We can be like, hey, you're getting a really, really good discount here, and here's the math to back it up. And then the GPS as applied map, that's an example of the soil test. As you can see, part of that field really needs a lot of it. So again, just providing data so everyone knows exactly what we did, where we did it, and why we did it. And then the crop farmer usually provides us a couple of the soil tests. I have to have that in there. And then weather data, day before application, every day we applied, and day after. So I make this nice little packet, everything's right there, and I ship it off. So by providing the crop farmer all of this information, they know exactly what we did, where we did it, and how much it was worth. If you are utilizing a custom applicator and they are not providing you this level of data, then please encourage them to do so. It truly amazes me how many crop farmers that I work with that are like, yep, so-and-so applied manure. Okay, how much you get? What was it worth? What was the nutrient value? I don't know. That's a problem. Because if they are not giving credit to the manure, they are probably over applying nutrients. It's not only a waste of money, but it can become an environmental concern. So manure, I like to explain, it's a good base layer. So they need to know what the base layer was before they can supplement the rest of it. So that being said, you have an operation. Do you do it yourself, or do you hire a custom guy? And what things should be considered when that question is asked? Should you invest in the equipment, or what other things do we need to think about? So the first question is the size of the job. How much manure has to be handled? Are all the fields close to the farm? Are they away from the farm? Is it several miles? So maybe you need semis, like maybe dairy has, oh, I have a dry line system or tanks and I can do everything close, but I need to hire a custom guy with semis to move it down the road. The availability of custom applicators. Are there any in the area? And if you want to use a custom applicator, don't call them 2 weeks before silage comes off, and hopefully they can get you in. We are booked 6 months to a year out. And it still amazes me how many guys call us for that fall. Employee availability. Are there dairy employees available during the manure application season? And they should have a basic understanding of agronomy, manure regulations, and knowledge of setbacks. Can you dedicate 1 or 2 of them to oversee the manure process every year? Are you willing to invest the time and energy in properly training them in manure management? In Ohio, our certification process is Certified Livestock Manager, which is what you need to have if you are a CAFO or if you handle so much manure. And the regulation is the person certified has to be within 2 hours of the job site. Well, we train all of our tractor drivers because they're the ones doing the work, and so therefore they're the ones that need to know the rules. The type of application system. Can the dairy afford to invest into a dragline system? I mean, that's several $100,000 investment. What is the preferred method? Do you prefer a honey wagon over a dragline? Again, if you have dry, do you need to invest in a dry spreader? And all of the other pieces of equipment that are needed to support each one type of those operations. Are semis needed? That's a lot more employees and a lot more truck drivers. And in Ohio, I have a real tough time finding truck drivers in the fall because it's the knowledge and the skill set is lacking. I mean, we used to have a whole list of retired guys that we could use, and unfortunately, that's becoming less and less. So manure management is definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution, and I have asked a lot of different questions today. If you didn't have time to jot them down, you can find them in my article for Progressive Dairy titled Manure Application Considerations for Keeping It In-House or Hiring Out. And just go to the Ag Proud website and search my name. So if you choose to go to the custom applicator route, what is the best way to work with them so that everyone achieves the goals they want to? When they are involved, it is now a 3-legged stool. The livestock producer, and with dairies, we have a lot of crop farmers. So the dairy, the crop farmer, and us. For that stool to function properly, it has to be balanced. The easiest way to keep things balanced and or resolve potential problems is communication. Communication fixes most things. I'm going to say that again. Most problems can be fixed with communication. Communication doesn't cost anything, and it is very easy to do. Yet, it is still a skill set, and if you perfect this skill, you'll be much better off. So the initial conversation of either having a custom applicator or talking to your current applicator I like to talk to them in the winter for the yearly plan, lay out everything so everyone's on the same page. Everybody on these legs of the stool needs to win, but nobody can win big. So the first step is we utilize a manure responsibility contract because black and white beats I think every day. And on that contract, it's an overview of who is responsible for what. This is different than our actual contract that outlines our costs per gallon, payment terms, who's responsible for driveways and things like that. So just on this contract, we have the equipment calibration, who is responsible for tile checks. We take responsibility of that during application, but we're custom guys. So the next day, we're several miles away and don't have time to come back and check. So we do place that responsibility onto our customer. Who is responsible for incorporation? Like I mentioned earlier, It can be within, a corporation can be within 24 hours, still counted as that. So if we're not immediately doing it, that is a responsibility that we pass on. Who's responsible for collecting the weather data? I mean, I usually do this. I just screenshot. I have cities on my phone and I screenshot it and I print it off when I get back to the office. Who's responsible for collecting soil samples, taking them to the lab, making sure that we get that information? And who's responsible for manure samples? Like I said, we take on most of this responsibility. That way I know it gets done and it's accurate data. Another question is, how many gallons need applied for the year? And who's the regulatory agency? CAFOs in Ohio are the Ohio Department of Agriculture, but I have a lot of 2,400 head hog barns, so that's soil and water. Are there any special permits, i.e. an NPDES permit that have some more stipulations? When is the manure to be applied? Spring, summer, fall, all three. If in the spring, does it need to be applied before planting, or is side dressing an option? Where are the fields located? We need to know the exact distance. Down the road, across the corner, or just a little ways are not accurate descriptions. I need to know where exactly they are so I can bring the right equipment, the right amount. We have a drag line system, so I need to bring the proper amount of how many miles I need and the amount of employees so I can get it done in a timely manner. I want to be there as short as possible and be as efficient as possible because it saves everyone time and money. When transporting manure, are semis needed? And if they are, is it possible to set up one-way traffic? Not only is that a safety thing, because we don't exactly have 2-lane roads in Ohio, and some of them are kind of iffy, especially when we're passing semis. So it's safer on the equipment and the humans. And it can extend the longevity of the road. And then other information, you should probably have the actual address of your customer and the contact information for local emergency services, because the reality is accidents do happen. It's a crisis situation. You're extremely stressed, and you should probably have that information at your fingertips so you can make some timely decisions. I have created a document that has the name of our customer, their cell phone number, the address, and that's in a sheet, in a folder, in the tractor. So that way, if anything happens, everybody knows where to get that information and has access to it. This folder also contains all of we handle a lot of different liquid. So I can't remember if it's 100 or 150 foot on a CAFO, but it's only 35 foot for a non-CAFO. So I have each sheet of all the different setback lengths, and it's in that folder, so the tractor drivers know exactly what it is. And because that information is just impossible to memorize. And then, is there an unhappy neighbor? Is it possible to do a route that minimizes how many times you go past that neighbor? And what is the policy if they approach your custom applicator? I mean, the custom applicator needs to know your stance of how to interact with this person if that's a situation that might arise. When we have an unknown vehicle sitting at the edge of the field watching us, our policy is we go and talk to them. And most of the time, if they drive off, they're just a hater, whatever, they leave. But 90% of the time, they are curious of what we're doing. So that gives us a chance to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it's a really good thing. And most of that has been really positive feedback. And they go, thank you. And it's just a couple minutes out of your day, but yet you've changed the mind of one person. And the reality is that can be huge, especially in the agricultural industry. What are the payment terms? Is the price all inclusive, or is it price per gallon and then there's additional line item for agitation? We utilize fuel surcharges. What are the remedies for a late invoice? Again, we do a per gallon per basis. We think this is more fair than hourly. So the dairy is not like, well, you said 7, but I didn't see those trucks rolling until 8. In our opinion, it makes things a little bit more fair. So by talking about all of these things beforehand, there should not be any surprises when we get a call, it's dry and it's time to go. And like I said, we have honey wagons, dragline system, and we have semis to feed both of those. So I need to know where my customer wants the manure so I can plan on how to get it there, how many employees are needed, and how many gallons need to be moved so I can set the schedule. Well, attempt to set the schedule, because as we all know, Mother Nature is really the one that dictates that, but we still do try to form some sort of plan. So I can be like, hey, you know, customer 3 or 4 down on the list, we might be there in a couple weeks, and of course, all depending on weather, but that way we just have a better idea what the plan is. So there's a few more tips and tricks from my side of the desk on how we can all work together. I get so many phone calls from the crop farmers like, yep, I just drove my pickup across the field. I think you can fly tomorrow. I get there, I do a AWC check, and it's not dry enough to run. So that's waste of time and money on everyone's part. So just because you can put seed in the ground does not mean I can apply manure. The manure has to be absorbed by the ground, so it has to be relatively dry for me to do that. There's a chance that I don't live near the facility. We have the opportunity, privilege, maybe headache of working all over Ohio, so I can't be running 3 or 4 hours away to check a field and come back. So by communicating with me a couple days ahead of time before you think it's going to be dry, as opposed to the night before, increases your chances of me being there on time, as opposed to running around stressed out trying to get there because it's all about customer service. I want to provide the best service possible to you, so I just need a little bit of communication so we can make that happen. Maneuverability. Can I get my equipment around your lagoon, or do I have to go through a gauntlet of things? The more room I have, it is safer not only for equipment, but for us placing that equipment and being able to work around it. Field driveways. Typically, specifically in a semi situation where I'm getting trucks in and out of the field, they need to be wide and gently sloped, especially on the entrance and exit, because it reduces the wear and tear on equipment. The less wear and tear on equipment, the less repair bills you're going to have, and it's going to be easier on the truck driver operating it. And that's for driveways in general. They should be smooth, remove the potholes, take a few minutes, grade the driveway, because the potholes slow me down. So the faster I can drive, the more efficient I'm going to be, and it, again, saves all parties time and money. And that might seem like a luxury, but it really shouldn't be. I mean, that's a relatively small investment for a relatively high rate of return. Because again, the faster I can turn that load, the faster I get my job done, I leave the premises and everybody should be happy. If utilizing a dragline system, try to plan things so you do all of the fields west of the dairy and then east of the dairy, and not one west, one east, back to the west. It's a lot of time to pick up and roll that hose. So when I'm spending time rolling hose, that's not time I'm applying, and it's just stressful. So just a little bit of planning makes everybody's life easier. So again, with this slide, I have talked about a lot of different topics, and there's an article in Progressive Dairy titled, "How Can I Help My Manure Hauler Help Me?" And I've also talked about some of these other tips and tricks in my column for the Journal of Nutrient Management called Lagoonside Reflections from the Viewpoint of a Manure Hauler. So, as with any other job, anything you do, safety should be the forefront of your mind. At the end of the day, everybody needs to get home with all of their limbs. When it's around midnight, you can't see straight, you have a problem, sometimes the best thing to do is to call it quits and do it again the next day. And I'm going to tell this story. I was around, but I was not on the job site with Dad. In a situation, there was 2 lagoons, we had a lagoon pump, there wasn't a lot of maneuverability, job gets done, it's late, Dad's trying to pull it out. The lagoon pump wants to go sideways and it coming straight out. So the consensus was something else needed to be hooked on the tractor with the log chain so it could be pulled out properly. Dad looked around, evaluated the employees he had with him, determined that none of them were qualified, that he did not want them in that other tractor. So he told them, we're going to call it quits. And the employee goes, well, what happens if it falls in? And dad goes, well, I've lost equipment, but I haven't lost an employee. So safety is really, really important. And I would just like you to take a step back, evaluate the situation in a situation like that, and hopefully make the right decision. I am so tired of seeing headlines like this. We lost 3 brothers in Ohio because one of them was underneath the barn working on a pump. He was overcome with gases, and then brother number 2 went in and tried to save him, and then brother number 3. Hydrogen sulfide will kill you. It is the most dangerous manure gas, and it is extensively thought of when you're entering confined space. You cannot, I repeat, cannot hold your breath and be okay. There have been situations where on a dairy farm, agitating on a foggy morning, and what happened is called an inversion. The gases were trapped between the fog and the lagoon, and we've lost humans and we've lost livestock. And unfortunately, there's been several stories of children playing downhill from the lagoon on a sunny day. So the reality is gases are not just confined space. They happen anywhere, and it's something you've got to think about. And people are like, oh, hydrogen sulfide smells like rotten eggs. So as long as I don't smell it, I'm fine. Wrong. It smells like rotten eggs at very low concentrations, but at very high concentrations, it takes away your sense of smell. So you're in danger and you don't even know it. In my opinion, gases are the most dangerous part of manure hauling because it's a danger we can't see. It's really easy to be like, oh, yeah, don't get close to that PTO shaft, or yeah, I don't want to climb in there. But guys, we've had so much in the manure industry of these stories. There's a really big push on safety, and it's personal. We've invested. I had an employee, we load our tankers by climbing on top. And I know that's usually, or it's turning out to be not the industry standard, but we don't run smokestacks. Our employees climb up, open the lid, lower the load tube, and then when we get done, lock the lid down and climb down. I had a guy fall off a trailer. It was in the middle of what we thought was an open area, and we think a puff came out of that top of it and it knocked him unconscious. So the next day, I bought these 4 gas meters. They're about $100 on Amazon, and it's a lot cheaper than a human life. The technology with gas meters has also come a long way. We used to have to bump test them every day and things like that, which for a custom applicator was a limiting factor of us doing that because I couldn't have all of this inventory on every job site. So finally, these individual ones came around. They're rechargeable. They're good for 2 years. Very simple, very easy to do, and a very important life-saving device. And I also want to tell another story where gases aren't just a problem in confined space. We had friends of ours, they were transferring between a honey wagon and a semi. They had these personal gas meters and they start going off. I mean, it's a sunny day, they're standing in the middle of the field. Well, what had happened was the gases are heavier than air. They came out of the top of that wagon, creeped down the side, and infected the area where they were in. So they stepped away and everything was fine, but they were like, yeah, we wouldn't have had any idea unless our meters went off. And again, breeze is your friend. So I said we climb to the top of our tankers. On our load tubes, we've put a flag so we know which way the breeze is blowing. So adjust things maybe if you can according to that, because again, breeze makes all the difference as well. So another really big point is I want to make, and this is a booster pump for a dragline system. So really this is, I'm talking to if you have a dragline or if your custom applicator is a dragline, air pressure. It cannot be seen and it will also kill you. This is a booster pump. And as you can see, I've marked a cap. This is, where we put in the pig to below the line. I can't remember what state this was, but the applicator was having a problem with this. He was working on it. The cap came off and decapitated him. So there's a reason that safety chain is there. or there should be, but these are simple yet crucial pieces of safety. So especially when blowing out the line on a drag line, do not kick, poke, or be close to it. There was another story, they were blowing out, guy kicked the hose, I don't know why, and I'm pretty sure I took the bottom of his leg off. So it might not only cost you a limb, but it could cost you your life. So with all of this, safety. Manure can and will kill you, but it needs to be handled properly. Okay. So this was a planned hose release demo at the North American Manure Expo. It was held in Wisconsin in 2023. It was held in New York last year, and it's going to be held in Ohio this year, where we plan on replicating it again. But just to show you what can happen.
Okay, lock her down.
There's off. All right, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Woo! Wow.
All right, what do you think, folks?
So that being said, the North American Manure Expo is being held in Ohio this year. It's going to be in Northern Ohio, one county south of Michigan, at the Fulton County Fairgrounds, July 30th and 31st. It will have all of the latest manure application equipment. We'll have application equipment demos, agitation demos, speakers ranging from extension specialists to safety experts, and plenty of networking opportunities. This is the place to be if you have anything to do with manure. So please come visit us in Ohio, and we will be glad to have you. And one more thing. If you liked what you heard today or are interested in learning any more of my opinions, I can be known on social media as Ohio Manure Gal on Facebook and Instagram. I do have some articles in Progressive Dairy. If you just go to Ag Proud website, search my name, they'll all pop up. And then I also currently have a column called Lagoon Side Reflections in the Journal of Nutrient Management. Our business, WD Farms, also has Facebook and Instagram. So we just share a little bit of what we're doing and try to start this conversation with the public to explain we're not the bad guys. We're actually really good, especially when it comes to recycling. And thank you so much for your time today. If you have at least one idea to bring back to the manure management side of your business, then I've done my job. Are there any questions?
Questions for Megan? Come on, there was a lot there. Got one right there.
Okay. Not a question, maybe as much as a comment. I've got some alfalfa and grass ground, and I've purchased manure from one of my local producers. And so just from the crop farmer's perspective, the negative part is with their big semis that are spreading manure is damage to crowns and compaction. And we've worked to minimize that, but that has to be on the cost side, or as you said, both parties balancing from the agreement, making a profit from the agreement.
Yes, exactly. For a long time, we only had honey wagons, and when we fed them with the semis, we would keep that area to one spot in the field. But yes, compaction is a significant problem. So one of our customers actually really encouraged us to buy a drag line, and that was the main thing, was compaction. So if drag line is an option, but if you're working in a bunch of small fields, it doesn't make a lot of sense. On big fields, hopefully they're square. I know a lot of ours are not. So It all depends. There is pros and cons, and you just got to look at everything and figure out what works best for you.
Agree.
Got one right here.
Do you have any trouble with entrance and exits out of fields and the public complaining? And if so, how do you negate those problems? Tracking manure out onto the road.
So we pride ourselves that we run a really clean operation. We typically are not tracking it out onto the road. If we are, maybe our customer has a skid steer and we'll scrape it off ourselves or something like that. One of my, again, story time, we were working behind a winery, our honey wagon unit, and we incorporate 95% of what we do. So we had the chisel plow working behind a winery. The owner comes out and goes, I see all of these trucks going back and forth. I know what you're doing, but I can't smell it. And we took that as a compliment. And we also run clean trucks because, like I said, our employees climb up to the top and we close the lid, open the lid and close the lid because people smell with their eyes. So a big piece of what we do is we keep things clean so we can minimize situations like that. We also utilize trucks entering and exiting roadway, or in situations where we can use one-way traffic. Make sure all of your lights are working on your semis, just make sure your brakes are working, things like that. Because again, it's the little things that make the biggest difference.
Anything else? All right. Well, I know Megan's going to be around in the back and off to the side. If anybody's got any questions directly for her, please feel free to chat her up and ask her off to the side. But we want to thank Megan Dresbach again for coming all the way to Savannah.